Before I begin today, I need to acknowledge something of a milestone. Today marks the third anniversary of the day I began producing these daily devotionals. They began 10 days after everything shut down on Friday, March 13th of 22 because of COVID. The first two Sundays after the 13th, we scrambled to film brief worship services to send out to the congregation before we got better organized to produce video services that approximated our regular services. But sometime between Sunday, March 15th and Sunday, March 22nd of 2020, two of you, independently of one another, contacted me and suggested that I might produce short daily devotionals to keep everyone's spirits up and to help us feel a sense of being together in our mutual isolation. At the time, I imagined I might do them for a month or two, surely not any longer than that, and surely only until we returned to worshiping together live in the sanctuary. But somewhere along the line, the devotionals sort of took on a life of their own. And here we are, 3 years later, and by my count, this is our 838th daily devotional together. Let me tell you just one story about them that keeps me going. Early in the pandemic, I called one of you because I knew you had come down with COVID and had become pretty sick and confined to bed for a couple of weeks. I remarked in an offhand way that maybe I should skip giving the day and date at the beginning of each one. That's when you told me how important hearing the day and date was to you, because it kept you tethered to reality and to the outside world. And so with that, I begin as always. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. Jesus wept. By my count, he actually wept twice. The Gospel of Luke reports that as he was riding into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, he stopped on the road down from the Mount of Olives and wept over Jerusalem, saying, "If you, even you, had only recognized on this day the things that make for peace." The other instance happens in today's reading from the Gospel of John. It is part of a much longer reading that we will hear in full on Sunday. It comes as part of the story of the raising of Lazarus. Lazarus was the brother of Martha and Mary, sisters in the town of Bethany, just over the Mount of Olives from Jerusalem. When Lazarus became sick, his sisters sent for Jesus to come and heal him. So far, this is shaping up like a lot of healing stories. The difference here is that Jesus was not nearby, and it was a personal friend who needed healing. Now, I know enough about human nature to know that when friends ask for something like this, they expect a quick response. They know Jesus, after all. It would have felt normal and natural to pull a few strings to have Jesus come and do what he has done for countless of others. If he could heal perfect strangers, surely he could drop everything and come to heal Lazarus, his friend. But that's not how this story plays out. Instead of coming right away, Jesus waits in place for 2 full days. Now, the Gospel account tells us that he's across the Jordan River, not far from the place where John had been baptizing. That would have put him at least a day's walk to Bethany. Let's say it took at least a day for Martha and Mary's messengers to find him, 2 days during which Jesus stays put, and another day for him to make the journey up to Bethany. No surprise, then, that the Gospel records that by the time Jesus arrived, Lazarus had been in the tomb already for 4 days. As Jesus approaches Bethany, Martha comes and meets him to say that if he had only arrived sooner, Lazarus would still be alive. Then as he comes closer, Mary comes to him. That's where we pick up the story. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Why did Jesus weep? We know from earlier in this story that Jesus had intentionally delayed so that, in his words, this illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. So he doesn't weep over Lazarus' death. He weeps instead for Mary and Martha's grief and anguish. This tells us everything we need to know about the gospel. It tells us that the God whom we worship is not a distant, uncaring God, but a God who has come close enough to feel our grief, to know our struggles, to experience the full range of human experience. It is a reminder that whatever trials and tragedies we may face, we do not face them alone. Jesus wept for Martha and Mary, and Jesus weeps with us whenever we anguish. Great news indeed. Tomorrow, let's linger a little longer over this story. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.